Alright, in this video I want to show you how to draw a human eye and how to shade it. So when we're talking about a human eye, the eye is a ball, a sphere that sits inside your head, inside your skull, and has skin over top of it. It's a little gross, but that's essentially what an eye is. So when you're thinking about the eye, or maybe this is your first time drawing an eye, think about it as a ball. So I drew a nice circle to represent the whole ball. You're not going to see much of this. Most of this is covered by your bones and your skin. Inside this eye, there's a round part of your eye that's a colored portion, which is called your iris. And then inside that, notice that it's concentric circles. They get smaller and smaller. Inside that is the black opening called the pupil. So right there, we've got the basic eyeball. You don't have to draw all of this out when you're drawing the eye. This is just to help you kind of, sorry, pun intended, visualize the eye. So I'm going to draw the eye on the left-hand side of someone's face. This varies from person to person, but I'm just going to draw kind of a basic eyelid shape. When you're drawing the upper eyelid, try not to draw too dark. A lot of it's going to be implied by shading. And then a bottom eyelid. But the bottom eyelid, you usually don't see much of it because light is going to come down. We're going to pretend the light is coming from up here, indicated by that arrow. So the light's going to come down and it's going to bounce off just off the edge of the eyelid, the lower eyelid, and it's going to kind of be all about reflection. We're actually going to be shading in the white of the eye more than you might think. Key is going to be to make sure that these are circular, nice and round. If you make them oval shape, your eyes are not going to look realistic. Over here is where there's a tear duct. So the eyeball kind of sits in here. There's your little fleshy bit right there. So there's the basic start of your eye. The way that your eye pushes against your skin and the way that your eye sits in your eye socket will determine the shape of your eyelid and the crease above your eye. Some people have this more pronounced, some people don't have it at all. But that's just kind of the way that the eye forces the skin to fold. So at this point, we know that we don't see this part of the eye, so we can get rid of this. Get rid of a little bit of that. We do want to keep in mind the way the eye curves down here. That's usually where maybe somebody has a little bit of a line underneath their eye, bags underneath their eyes. That's just where the eye is pushing against the skin. So I can erase this. And you can see already that this looks like a decent eye. Now we're going to get into the shading. I'm using a mechanical pencil just to show you that it can be done. Typically I like the other kind of pencil because I can get a better gradation, but we're going to make do. So the light source is coming from up here. So one thing that we're going to see is there's going to be a cast shadow from your eyelid up here onto your eye. So what I usually do is I start shading even in the whites of the eye, just slightly at the top. A little bit of shadow in the corner maybe. Alright, this side. A little bit of shading, kind of come in here to the tear duct. Alright, now we'll go into the iris. It depends on whether the person's brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes, hazel eyes. I'm just going to go kind of based off my own eyes. When you start shading the iris, you start on the edge, which is where it's darkest, and near the top, because it's also in shadow. Oh, and I'm going to say that if the light's coming in there, we're just going to draw in a little highlight right here. And that way I know to just kind of leave that area white, so we get nice glisten off of the eye, make it look realistic. So dark near the top, dark near the edges, having it lighter as it comes in. Some people put in like little star pattern, and some people have that in their eyes. I typically don't teach it that way because people tend to overdo that, and then it makes it look cartoonish. And then as the value comes down here, what's happening is light comes down, bounces off the cheek, and hits the bottom of the eye. So I tend to get lighter as I get towards the bottom. You're going to want to look at the lighting on your portrait as you're drawing yourself to make sure that you're drawing the reflections the way they are, because those reflections are all going to be dictated by the light source in the room, or if you're outside, the sun. And then maybe just a little bit of a darker value as it goes and tucks itself underneath there. Okay. Now the iris, or the pupil. The pupil is going to be just solid black. Try to make the iris nice and round, even though some of it's cut off. Make it nice and round. Oops, I went a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to make my pupil bigger. But you want to make sure that it's a circle here, and then the same circle just a little bit smaller inside. And now that I have that established, everything else looks a little bit lighter, so I can go back and I can darken the pupil, or the iris, in other places. Alright. Eyelashes. They're going to come down and out. And you don't have to put a ton of them. Down and out while they're here, but then they start to come a little bit more out towards us as they go further up the eye. And then I usually, just so I don't overdo it, I don't really go much further. I might like put a little bit of an indication, because they're kind of like just straight at us through here. And then here's something to keep in mind down here. The eyelid has a thickness down here. So you want your shading down here. And this is where having a good drawing pencil would come in handy. The shading would be a lot less linear and grading. Stuff falling down around me. It's a shade underneath. It's usually a little bit of a value through here. Going back in here. A little bit of shading in the tear duct area. Pull a little shading up here. And then there's usually a value underneath the eyebrow. You can start to see this happening. Okay, now go back, and the eyelashes on the bottom lid come out of that line on the edge, not up here, because that's the where the white of the eye and the what's it called, the eyelid meet. And just look for the values, the way it's shaded. And there you have the start of an eye. There's a worksheet that I posted in the class materials section of your class page. Check that out. It shows you step by step, so you don't have to watch this video over and over. All right. Next time, noses. Bye.